Hello everyone, it's Matt here. Just a little reminder for those of you that haven't already done so, if you wouldn't mind just filling in the brief survey for me that you can see on the screen, and we'll get started right on in about 5 minutes from now. Okay, well, hello everyone, and welcome to this Microsoft React presentation tonight. The topic of the talk tonight is what is Power BI and why should I care? If you haven't noticed already, I do have just a brief survey on the screen. You can use the QR code to quickly enter that survey, and just 4 quick questions just to give me a sense of who you are and whereabouts you are, and a little bit about your knowledge of Power BI. I'm going to get started. Let me start by introducing myself. So my name is Matt Allington. I spent my life working at Coca-Cola, actually, of all places. I spent 25 years working at Coca-Cola, had a great career. I worked in sales. I had an opportunity to work in IT for about 10 years. But, you know, there was one thing about my career at Coke, and that was that I really loved data. I always loved data and liked to work in roles where I could use data to my benefit. At the end of my 25 years, I started my own company. So I now have a company called Accelerator BI. So I'm based in Sydney, Australia. I've written a couple of books. In fact, it's really one book which I've updated on a few different occasions. My book is about Power BI and how to use the DAX language inside Power BI. And I do a lot of training and blogging online. And I'm also a Microsoft MVP. So that's me. Let me quickly bring the survey results onto the screen, and I'll just do a quick refresh. So this survey that I asked you to fill out was a Microsoft Excel form. So pretty straightforward to create a simple survey like that. It's not a live survey, it's close to live. So it's captured online, and then I just have to hit refresh on my Power BI report to get my numbers in. So yeah, we've got about 20 or so responses there. Maybe I'll refresh that later on. If some people join late and they see the link in the Q&A, maybe you can fill in there. So this is interesting. So most people had heard of Power BI before the session started today. There was just one person who perhaps has joined because they saw the topic and thought that might sound interesting. Here is the attendance by country, so pretty good attendance from Israel. I've actually been to Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, great part of the world. I'm obviously from Australia, and we've got some people from India and the UK, etc. When we have a look at how long ago did people discover Power BI, quite a few people just in the last sort of 12 months or so. But a few people going back quite some time. In fact, this one was me. I answered my own survey. I first discovered the early forms of Power BI back in 2014. And it was one of the reasons why I left and started up my own business. And then if I have a look at how many people have actually used Power BI, I didn't actually end up sorting these in the correct order, but quite a few people have really never used it, and only a few of you have actually used it a bit. So that's probably means that we've got the right audience here, and I've pitched my presentation today to the right level. So let me get started. I do have some slides, and I will be using some slides just to guide me through the presentation, but I also have a fair bit of hands-on demos as well, so that you get to see Power BI. But there's maybe half a dozen slides to start with, so just keep that in mind. So the objective of the session is I want to give you a good understanding of the breadth of Power BI. So Power BI is lots of different things, and collectively it's actually a game-changing product in this world of self-service business intelligence. And so I'm going to show you basically how Power BI can be used at a very high level. I can't teach you how to do it, of course, in a session like today, but if you walk away with just an understanding, perhaps that you didn't have before, an appreciation of what can be done, and maybe even a little bit of excitement about what can be done, then that will be a great outcome. So let me start off by talking about the Power BI ecosystem, as I like to refer to it, because Power BI is not just one product. It's actually a collection of many different products that together make up this Power BI ecosystem. And the first product, or the first sort of subset of the Power BI ecosystem, is this product called Power BI Desktop. Now, I'm going to be showing you Power BI Desktop today, but Power BI Desktop it's a free piece of software for a PC. So it's sort of like Excel. So it's a piece of software that you can download onto your PC, and you can load data into the software, and you can build reports and do analysis, and you can actually save the file, and you could email the file to somebody else. and they could open the file using Power BI Desktop as well and share. And all of this is free. So the software is free, and you can send an email with a file attached for free. And that's what Power BI Desktop is. It's actually an authoring tool. It's a tool to build Power BI reports, but it's really not designed to be the primary sharing tool. Power BI Desktop is designed to publish reports. So you build the reports and then you publish them to the Power BI service, which is also known as powerbi.com. And so once you've published it to the service, everyone can get a free account. You can log in, you can use your browser to consume your report. In fact, once it's on the Power BI service, you can use one of the many techniques, including the browser, but also there's mobile devices. So there's a phone version, there is a tablet version, multiple ways to consume the Power BI reports that you build. And all of this is free. There's no charge to get started with Power BI. However, the one thing that you cannot do with the free version of Power BI is share your content securely with another person. And so the way Microsoft licensed this product is it's free for everyone to use for personal use, but as soon as you want to share your work with somebody else, then presumably you're getting some value from the free product, and then that's the time for you to pay for the product. And so, and the entry price, orders of magnitude, is about $10 US per user per month for the software. So not very expensive, certainly with small numbers of people. Now, in addition to this main sort of processing and publishing approach that I've just described, there's also literally hundreds of data sources and online standard reports that you can download. Some of them are free, some of them are premium products where you have to purchase them. And these products, these reports will plug directly into existing data sources such as Salesforce.com, but maybe it's Xero accounting software or QuickBooks or something like that. And third-party companies can actually produce applications or reporting applications that you can just connect directly to your online data source and then go ahead and consume from there. So this is an important part of the ecosystem. There's also an area called Power BI Gateways, and a gateway is essentially a virtual private network. So it's a secure connection that will connect data from powerbi.com into your internal organization so that you can securely refresh your reports that are stored online at powerbi.com. And the gateways do a few other things, but that's the main thing that they do. Now, Power BI is also an umbrella term, so it's sort of like an umbrella term is the best way to describe it, for two products, Power Pivot for Excel and Power Query for Excel. Now, both of these products come bundled with Excel. They've been there for between 5 and 8 years, depending on the product. And these are exactly the same technology, or close enough to exactly the same technology as you will get inside Power BI Desktop. And this is really important because people who learn the skills of Power BI can reuse those skills inside Excel to extend the capability of traditional Excel. And then there is a growing list of other products and services that are also part of the Power BI ecosystem. So Power BI Report Server is the ability to produce paginated reports. So if you're familiar with SQL Server reporting services, that's basically what Power BI Report Server is, but designed for Power BI. Power BI Premium is a different licensing methodology where you can pay for a premium capacity and you can consume, instead of paying for a named user license, you can pay for a capacity and then share more widely. And then there's Power BI Report Builder. Report Builder is the SSRS replacement. Report Server is an internal version of Power BI instead of having to go out to powerbi.com. Sorry, I got those two back to front. So this is the Power BI ecosystem, and you actually don't have to be an expert in all pieces, but certainly there's a lot to learn if you do want to be an expert in all areas of Power BI. I thought it would be useful just to give you a couple of comparisons of what Power BI is and isn't. So first of all, Power BI is not Microsoft Excel. They're very different products. Excel is a spreadsheet, as I'm sure you know, and Power BI is actually a database. So Power BI is not Excel. It's not the same as Excel. And Power BI is also not a relational database. So it's not SQL Server. It's not Microsoft Access. So it's not a spreadsheet and it's not a relational database. Power BI is a specialized reporting database that's been built from the ground up by the Microsoft team. In fact, a lot of the people on the development team for Power BI actually came from an Excel background or a SQL Server background. So Power BI has its heritage in these products, but it's been built from the ground up, fit for purpose for reporting and specifically self-service reporting so that Excel users can use the tool to a level that perhaps they couldn't have done in the past with the more enterprise reporting tools. Power BI is also not a silver bullet for all of your reporting problems. And so it is shiny and it is new, but it won't just instantly solve all of your business and data reporting problems. So there's work to be done with the new tool if you want to use this tool to solve your problems. But it is a significant step forward for these citizen report builders, so business users that are responsible for building robust enterprise strength reports and analytics. And historically, the business people couldn't do this work because the technology was too complex. And Power BI allows the business users, a qualified business user, to build high quality business reports. Also, Power BI is not something that you can pick up without any effort. You do have to learn. It's not as simple as just opening and expecting to be off and running. You can't say, I know Excel, therefore I'm just going to start using Power BI from today. Unfortunately, it's just not quite that simple, but it is definitely something that any Excel user can learn. So, but you do have to do some learning, so just keep that in mind. Now, I like to explain self-service business intelligence as being in 4 distinct stages. And so the first stage is data acquisition. So that's the process of connecting to your data wherever it is. It could be in a SQL Server database, it could be a CSV file. And the first thing you need to do is load it into the Power BI database. Just as a reminder, Power BI is a database, not a spreadsheet. Once you have that data loaded, you then have to prepare the data because the data is actually not ready for reporting once you load the raw data in. There's work to be done, and that's called data modeling, which I'll come back and talk about shortly. And once you've done those 2 important steps, then you can start to visualize the data. So it's not as simple as just creating a visual after you load the data. There's always that intermediate step. And then finally, you go about sharing. So this is the 4 logical phases of self-service BI. Typically, the data flows from left to right. However, the reality when you build a Power BI report is you tend to jump back and forth between lots of different stages. Okay, so now there are some questions that people are coming in, and I'm going to sort of move on. Some weird noises. Can anyone else hear that? Maybe you could. A few people are saying that. I can try and change my headphones, but
yeah, it seems to be like a bit of like a cackling noise, kind of like movement.
Okay, so it could be. All right. So unfortunately, I've only got a headset that maybe it's my microphone.
Well, it's already starting to sound better now.
Okay, it could be my microphone scraping on my jumper, so I'm sorry about that, but I'm glad I checked. All right, so hopefully that's better. Please let me know if I need to unplug my headset and I can just go with the PC. All right, so I'm just conscious of time, so I've got about an hour, but I want to keep moving forward. So let me get into a brief demo on data acquisition. And so here I have a blank version of Power BI Desktop. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to load some data from a CSV file. So let me just find my data here. Now, here I've got in a folder, I have three CSV files, and these files, I'll just quickly open one and you can have a look at what's in there. But it's basically, I'm trying to simulate some extract from some system. There's a system somewhere with sales data, and it's a CSV file, and I get this file dump maybe once a year. In reality, you might get a similar file dump every week or every month. And so the first thing I want to do is I want to load this data into Power BI Desktop. And Power BI is really good at loading data like this, when it's in similar files without having to cut and paste the data in. So I'm going to come over here into Power BI Desktop, and I'm going to say get data. There's a lot of different data connectors. So these are standard ways that you can connect to data. You can see that text CSV is one of the choices, but I don't want to choose that option because I actually want to load the data from a folder, not from an individual file. So I'm going to click on more, and it'll pop up my dialog. I'm going to connect to a folder, and I actually copied the folder path a second ago. So there's the folder path. And then what Power BI does is it makes a connection to that folder. It peeks inside the folder, and it can see that there are 3 files, and I'm going to click combine and transform. And now Power BI, now the tool that I'm actually using at the moment is actually Power Query. What Power Query does is it looks at the files in that folder, and it's going to have an attempt to load and combine that data for me automatically without me having to do anything. Now you can see over here that there's actually a number of things. These are all queries. These are called queries. And maybe I can just zoom in a little bit. So hopefully that's zooming in as I do that. So there are a number of different queries. This was automatically produced by Power Query, but ultimately I ended up with this data table, which I'm going to rename as my sales table. And even though Power Query has loaded all of the data in those CSV files, I actually don't have to load all of the data into my model. So I can selectively come in here and make some changes to my data. And I can say, do you know what? I'm just going to come up here and I'm going to just choose a few of the columns. I'm going to take the product key. So these 4 columns tell me the product, the date, the customer, and the store. And I'm just going to bring the cost, the sales amount, and the tax amount. So I can selectively choose what to load out of those CSV files here in Power Query, and then I just simply go close and apply. Now, if you've ever had to consolidate CSV files manually for reporting purposes, that alone is worth the price, which is free, by the way, to get started with Power BI, because that's actually a very difficult thing. And so now I've got the data loaded. So if I jump over here, this actually looks a lot like Excel when we come over here, but you actually can't edit the data once you're inside Power BI. So if I try and edit, nothing's editable here. It has to be correctly loaded up front. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to build a quick visual. So I might just put this is a column chart, and I'm going to bring the date onto the axis and the sales amount onto the values. And with very little effort, I've produced my first sales report chart, which just shows me sales amount by year. Now, one of the super duper features of this file combine from a folder is that next year or at some time in the future, you may end up with another file. And so I've got a 2004 file here, which has got some more sales data, and I'm just going to drop that into the data folder. So now instead of there being 3 files, there's 4. And all I have to do now, because I've built a Power Query report, is just click on that refresh button, and Power Query will re-establish the connection through to the folder, and it will load all the files that it finds, and it's found the new file. And you can see in there that it's automatic. So highly efficient way of processing your different types of files. The files that are in that folder do need to be of the same type. They need to be in the same basic structure. But apart from that, it's pretty much automatic. Now, I've loaded some data from a CSV file, but a second really powerful feature of Power BI and Power Query is that you can bring data in from multiple sources. So you don't have to just, if I'm loading from CSV, it doesn't mean all the data has to be CSV. So I'm going to get some data, and this time I'm going to bring some data in from a SQL Server database that I have running on my computer. And this is the AdventureWorks database. So I just have to specify the database. Power BI will make a connection, more correctly, Power Query makes a connection back to my SQL Server database. And this time I'm going to bring customers, products, and territories, which are 3 other tables which contain more information about my sales transactions. I'm going to go in and transform data. So when I click transform data, I load Power Query again. And I'll just show you a couple of other little tricks that Power Query can do. So there's my sales table from before. Here's my customer table. As I mentioned, you don't have to load individual columns if you don't want to. So I'm not going to load the date of birth. So I just right click and remove it. Maybe I'll get rid of marital status as well. So you can be quite selective on what you load and what you don't load. I do have a name column here, which is a full name. So maybe I'm going to change this and I'll call it full name. So you can start to change the names of your columns before you load it in. And do you know what, for reporting purposes, I would really like a column that has the first initial followed by the surname. And there's a few different ways you can do this, but there's a really tricky and clever technique where I go add column from example. So I'm going to basically write an example for Power Query. I'm going to show Power Query what I want and ask Power Query to work out how to do that transformation for me. And so for this first row, I want J Yang. So first initial space followed by the surname. Now when I did that, okay, Power Query couldn't quite work out what I was on about. So this one's going to be E Huang. And once I've put in 2 examples, Power Query is smart enough to work out the pattern, and it's actually written a line of code, as you can see up the top here. I'll just zoom in so you can see that. So Power Query has a very powerful programming language under the hood, which is called M. And just by using that query by example or column by example, I was able to teach Power Query what I wanted in my new column. And so this is the, I'll call it the short name or first name, last name or something like that. And so yeah, so I don't actually have to know how to program to be able to get some of these benefits. And there's many other ways I could have solved that particular problem. All right, so I'm going to bring in one more query before I move on to the next section, and I want to show you a third way in which you can load data in Power Query. So if I come up here to the Home tab, notice there's an Advanced Editor button here. Now, as I've stepped through these transformation steps, Power Query records the set of instructions that are required to connect to the data, navigate to the correct table, remove the columns that I don't want, rename the column. So these instructions are recorded as steps, they're process steps if you like. And if I click here on Advanced Editor, this is where you can actually see the full programming language. And if you know how to program in this language, you could come into this editor and literally write a Power Query query from scratch without even having to use the user interface. That's quite an extreme skill. Most people don't do that, but if you wanted to, you could certainly do that. I'm going to add one more query here. So I'm going to add a new query. This time it'll be a blank query, just to show you what can be done. So here I have a query that builds a calendar table. So a calendar table is a very common technique. We load them into our reports so that we can start to aggregate our data by year and month and those sorts of things. So I've actually got some M code that builds a calendar table from scratch, and I can just copy that code and I can come into my query and I can just paste this as advanced code and click done, and that will build my calendar table automatically for me. And I'll just call that calendar and that should be pretty much good to go. So now I've got the 5 tables that I need for my report, and I can just click close and apply. And then what Power Query does is it goes ahead and executes all of those queries that I created, and it actually loads the data into Power BI Desktop. You can see the 5 tables over here now. And if I came over here, you could go and have a look at any of those tables, including the new column, which was actually generated by Power Query automatically for us. Okay, so that's a high-level look at data acquisition with Power Query. So you can import data from virtually any source. You don't have to load the data as it exists in the source, so you can manipulate it on load. And if you really want to learn to be a superhuman when it comes to Power Query, you can learn the M language. One of the great things about Power Query is that it's really designed for business users. So it's very user interface driven, and you don't have to learn the language if you don't want to in order to get great value. And if you do learn Power Query, you'll get complete transferability to Excel, and you can use Power Query in Excel as well. Okay, now I want to move on to the second stage, which is called data modeling. And as I mentioned up front, after you load the raw data from your source, it's actually not ready for reporting purposes. And so the next task is to complete what we call data modeling. Now, this is a fairly new term for most sort of people with a business background. If you've worked in IT or if you've worked in business intelligence, you might be familiar with this term. So I like to use this analogy to explain what data modeling is. And instead of data modeling, I'm going to talk about clay modeling. So let's talk about clay. So clay is a raw material. So this is a raw material. And that raw material has got a lot of potential and utility and capability. But in its raw form, you actually can't do a lot with it. Even though you understand the intrinsic value of that raw material, you just can't do much with it in the raw form. But if you give that raw material to someone who knows what they're doing, such as a clay modeler or a potter, that person can shape and prepare and enhance and optimize the raw material and turn it into something which is more usable, reusable, has a high level of utility, it's fit for purpose. And so that's clay modeling. And then if you just swap out the word clay with data, then that's the best way to describe what data modeling is. So data is a raw material, but in its raw form, you can't do much with it. But if you give the data to someone who's skilled in the process of data modeling, they can shape it, prepare it, enhance it, make it fit for purpose so that you can build reports using that data over and over again. And so really the purpose or the steps that you need to carry out when you're being a data modeler are all of the things that you can see on the screen. And so you have to decide what gets loaded. Is it 1 table or 5 tables like I just loaded then? Potentially you might join those tables together so that they behave as if they're one. You hopefully will write some formulas to extract new business concepts from the data that don't exist in the raw data, and you give your formulas good names and suitable formatting. So all of those things are part of the data modeling process, and this is where we use the DAX language, which is what my book is all about. So let me jump over and we'll have a look at a bit of a demo on data modeling. And so I will just get my file back up here. And I'm going to jump back to my report. Now I'm going to show you this third view, which is called the model view. I'll just go into full screen. And the model view, not surprisingly, is where we do our data modeling. And so here are the 5 tables, which I have already loaded. I'll just move them across and make them a bit bigger so that you can see what's going on. So here are the 5 tables. My customer information is in this table, products in this table, and so on. And this table contains my sales. Now, if you've ever built a report in Excel and then written a VLOOKUP to go and fetch some information from another table, then that's a very good analogy for what I'm about to do. So here I have the product code in my sales table, so product 602, and all I have to do is drag and drop that column, and and I just drop it on the product code in the products table. And when I do that, it creates a relationship between those two tables. And that drag and drop is equivalent to writing a VLOOKUP on every single table every single column in the products table. And so part of the modeling process is to join these tables logically between the transactional table, which in my case happens to be a sales table, and the dimension tables, as they're called, which happen to be these four tables here. Now, just a word of caution, when you start to use Power BI in your workplace, chances are the relationships will not be created as easily as I've just shown you, because data tends to be dirty. There's certain rules and things that you need to do to prepare your data to allow it to work the way I've just shown you. So this is a demo, it's training material. This has been well prepared, but the reality is there's often a fair bit of work to be done before you can do what I've just done. Okay, so now I've got my my table set up. Notice that my nice column chart has now changed, and so that's because I use the order date from my sales table. Now what I need to do is go and use my date from my calendar table, because I've now basically told Power BI that this order date, I'm now delegating responsibility of managing the date to my calendar table. That would be one way to think about it. All right, so let me go ahead and build a visual. So this is a table. It's a bit like an Excel spreadsheet, I guess. And I'm going to bring my customer occupation into that table. And I'm going to bring in the total sales amount and the total product cost. And I'm just dragging these columns across, much like you would in a pivot table. And when I do that, there's a whole lot of formatting options, as I'm sure you could appreciate. I won't spend a lot of time on formatting these things, but there you go. You can see that we've got a very quick and easy summary of total sales by customer occupation. Now, this drag and drop of a column of numbers, so sales amount, just let me show you here. So sales amount is a column of numbers. These are the individual transactions that occurred through the sales system that we're using here. And when you drag that column of numbers into a visual, Power BI automatically adds those numbers up, right? And so the default behavior is to sum the numbers in a column and therefore give you a total of the numbers in that column. But you don't have to take the sum. You can instead say what's the minimum value of a transaction, or what's the average value of a transaction. There's different ways that you can look at this data. Okay, now dragging those columns of numbers, it works. But one of the problems of dragging the column of numbers, if you've got a bit of a retail understanding, this is the total value of the sales. This is the total cost of the sales. But what if I wanted to know how much profit did I make from this customer? Well, unfortunately, I don't have a column that tells me how much profit I have. In fact, there's no information stored in this data set that tells me how much profit that I made from this customer. But of course, I can calculate the profit if I know how to write a formula. And so dragging columns will get you started, but it has very limited capability. And in fact, I recommend that people don't drag columns and don't rely on the default aggregation, and instead write their own formulas. And the default, the formulas are called measures. And so I'm going to write a measure. So this measure is going to be called total sales. And I'm just going to write a formula. It's very similar to Excel. So there's a sum function. I need to add up the numbers in the sales amount column. And as soon as I've done that, I'm going to apply some formatting. So I'm going to do this as currency general, Australian dollars, 0 decimal places. And now I've got what's called a measure. Notice it's got a calculator. So this is telling me this is not a column of data, it's a formula, and I can just drag that formula into my matrix and it gives me the correct answer. So I'm just going to quickly do one more. So I'm going to do a couple more actually. So I'm going to do another new measure, and for this new measure, I'll do total cost. And same again, sum of the cost column. Make sure I'm getting the right column. I will just do the formatting. It is good practice to immediately apply the formatting as you go. That's part of your modeling exercise, is to make sure that people have got good formatting on their reports. One of the benefits of doing this formatting is once you've done it once, it works over and over again. You never have to do it again for that product. Okay, so now I want to know how much profit did I make? And so now I can right click and write a third measure. And profit is the total of the sales minus the total of the cost. So that's total profit. And I could write my formulas again. I could say sum up the sales amount and so on, but there's actually a better way, and I can reuse these two measures that I've already created inside another measure. And so what I'd say is give me the total sales that I've already calculated and subtract from that the total cost that I've already calculated, and I can reuse those formulas inside my formulas and my additional formulas. And I'll put that to 0 decimal places. And now I've got my concept of total profit that didn't exist before. So this is the DAX language that I'm showing you. Most people have to invest a bit of time to learn about the DAX language, but it's a pretty powerful language and certainly well worth the investment if you're building these types of reports. Let me build another report now. So now I've built these capabilities, I can reuse them again and again and again. So what I might do now is I'll come to my territory table. I'm just going to drag the country column onto my report canvas. It builds me a nice map. And I'm going to grab my total profit and make the size of my bubble represent the profit that I make by country. And so I'm making $3.9 million worth of profit here, and 3.6 here, and so on. So just with a few simple formulas, I've been able to enhance my raw data and start to build something that's a little bit more powerful than just the raw data. Okay, I'm just conscious of time, so I'm going to move on, and I will come back to the questions. So in summary, data modeling, you decide what you load. You can then start writing formulas to extract new concepts from your data that weren't previously available. So you're applying business rules such as how do you calculate profit. And most business users who are analysts or who work with Excel can do this, but just most people just need a little bit of help to get started, because it's a little bit different than regular Excel. And once you learn the skills, it's fully transferable again between Power Pivot for Excel and Power BI. Okay, so moving on, I'll talk about visualization and sharing. And so I'm just going to do a couple more things, and then we'll go ahead and share this report online, and you'll see how it works. I want to show you a couple of the inbuilt capabilities for Power BI that even people that use it don't always know these capabilities. And so what I'm going to do here on the canvas, on this report canvas, I'm going to double click. And when I double click, Power BI automatically adds a new visual for me called Q&A. And in this visual, I can ask a question just using natural language, and Power BI will try and answer the question for me. And so here's a few suggested questions here, which all look very interesting, but I would like to know what is the total, spelling it helps, total profit by color. Now, this is American spelling, so what is the total profit by color? So just by typing that query, Power BI was able to look at my underlying data set. Because I gave my measure a good name, total profit, it understands what total profit is. It found this color. If I click here, it found this color in my table of products, and now I'm getting the total profit that's made by color of product. So very quick and easy to build a visual, even if you don't know a lot about Power BI, providing you've got a good model that somebody else has prepared. Okay, so the last thing I'll do before moving on to online publishing and sharing, I'm going to put a line chart in here because I want to show you one more feature. On my line chart, I'll bring the date onto the axis, and Power BI automatically creates a year, month, day hierarchy. And I'll put total sales as the value. Obviously, I'm doing lots of things and I know what I'm doing here, but you know, just illustrative, it's very quick and easy to build a visual. Okay, so I've got a line chart here showing me the progression of time, and you can see the sales are a little bit lumpy. Some months it goes up, some months it goes down. But look here, something happened in December 2003. Look at that jump in sales that happened during that year. Now, if you're an analyst, someone might come to you and say, what happened in December 2003 to cause that jump in sales? And Power BI has a really powerful feature called explain the difference. So if I right click on that data point, I can go analyze, explain the increase. And what Power BI does is it uses its artificial intelligence. It analyzes the December data point and the November data point. It compares the difference between the two, and it presents you with some visuals that might help explain what happened. Now, not all of these visuals are going to make a lot of sense, particularly given that this data is sample data. But when there is real data, you can rest assured that this explain the increase tool will actually help you find insights. And so here, if I look at this one, I can see that sales by trading group, North America had a $250,000 increase over what happened in November. And so these are the three key numbers that drove the difference between the sales in November and the sales in December. And if you like that report, you can, chart, sorry, you can add it to your report and use it for other purposes. For now, I'm not going to add that, I'll just move on. Now, everything inside Power BI is cross-filtered. So if I click on 2003, then what happens is everything on the page will update to show me just 2003. If I click on the bubble in Australia, everything on the report will update just to show me the sales for Australia and so on. So lots of interactivity and clickability within Power BI. Okay, let me go back, and I don't think I have a summary here. So what I'm going to do is go straight ahead and now share my report. And I've got a training account here that I'm using, so I'll have to publish this. When I publish it, I'll have to save it. So the first thing before you publish a report to powerbi.com is to save it. So this is the live demo. And so I'll just save it locally on my computer. And then Power BI will ask me, where do I want to publish? I'm going to put it into my personal workspace, which is my online personal secure space where I can have a look at my own reports. I'll just give that a second. It does depend on your bandwidth on your computer, how long it takes to get up there live. And now it's there. I'm just going to come over and I'll refresh my workspace. And so here's my workspace. So this is now powerbi.com, and here is the database that I created, and here is the report that I created. And you'll see that it's literally identical to what I just built on the screen. Still interactive. I can come in here and interact with the report. In fact, I can come in here and edit the report if I want to. I can add a new page and I can throw a new visual. Maybe I'll bring product category and product subcategory and total sales into this is called a tree map, just so I get some sort of visual representation of the different categories. Maybe I'll get rid of category and I'll just put subcategory. So it's a bit like a pie chart, but it's square and it shows you the proportional size. So I can use powerbi.com to build my own reports or edit the reports that I've already created. Also, when I've got my reports here online, I can create what's called a dashboard. And so here in my dashboard, I can pin this map to this other thing called a dashboard. And when you might use a dashboard, sorry, I can't type and talk at the same time. You might use a dashboard if you've got multiple reports. So I've actually got a second one here. I've got this survey result. I might just try and see if I can, I don't want to schedule, I'll just see if I can refresh that. I don't know whether that will update or not. I haven't got my gateway installed. Okay, so what I will do though is that I've got this version and I might want to pin this particular object onto my dashboard as well. So a dashboard is used to take visuals from more than one Power BI report and pin them into one common location so that you can just look at this one screen and see what's going on. There's different ways I can share. Now, in order to share, you must have a Power BI Pro account. So if I tried to come here and click share, I'll get prompted that I need a Power BI Pro account. So I'm going to do my 60-day free trial. And once I've done my 60-day free trial, I can actually come here. What I might do actually, now I'm going to share using a technique called, this is called public sharing, and this is not secure. So never ever do this with your company data. And I'm going to, where's my, they're always changing this. So let's go embed publish to web, that's what it's called. So I'm going to get this publish to web code and I'm going to put it in the chat. That's obviously not it. Let's just try again. Did it just, maybe I missed that message. Maybe it said, I don't have permission. Okay, so because this is not secure, one of the changes that Microsoft has recently made is to prevent people from accidentally doing that. So it's off by default. And because I'm using my training tenant, I'm not able to do that. All right, so I can't do that. Let me show you one other thing though. And what I'll do is I'm going to use this feature called Analyze in Excel. So once you've published your Power BI report and data set at powerbi.com, you're able to use this other technique called Analyze in Excel. And what Power BI does is it downloads a special connection string onto your computer. So I've downloaded this connection string and I'm logged into the wrong account. So I need to come in here and I'm going to training 104. And I'm going to need to find my password in a hurry. So just give me a second. I'm pretty sure I've got it up here. I'm going to log in. So I'm basically now creating that secure connection from Excel up to powerbi.com. And look, here's the exact formulas that I created before, and I can build a live Excel pivot table. But what's important about this Excel pivot table is it contains no data at all. All the data is stored online at powerbi.com. This is what we call a thin workbook that has a live connection back to powerbi.com, and anyone can come in and now build a regular pivot table and save it and always have the latest version of the data. Okay, so let me just take a breath and wrap up there. It's sort of 10 to the top of the hour, so I do want to leave some time for questions. So just to summarize, so visualizations, there's a stack of standard visual tools that you can use. When you click on anything, it cross filters everything else. If the standard visuals don't meet your need, there's a whole ecosystem of custom visuals that developers have produced that you can use. And once you've got your reports, you share on powerbi.com, and then you can use tools like Q&A and Analyze in Excel and explain the difference. And frankly, the changes and the pace of change are so fast that it's difficult even for me to keep up with the features that are coming along. So I'm going to take a breath there. So I'm going to go back now and have a look at some of these questions and do my best to answer those if I can. Okay, so first question I see was any plans for a Mac version? So the short answer is no. Power BI Desktop only works on a PC and there's currently no plans or no announced plans for a Mac version. However, Power BI Desktop is only for authoring the reports. They're designed to be consumed from powerbi.com. And so as long as you're not a report author, you can use Power BI by going to a browser and consuming the report or using your mobile apps, but you just won't be able to build your own reports on a Mac. So hopefully that answers that. Is there a way to have published Power BI report connected to a SQL database which receives new data every 10 to 30 minutes that will keep updating with SQL? So very good question. The answer is yes. What I've shown you is what's called import mode. So I'm doing a static load of my reports, and when I publish it online, I need a gateway to connect back, and using the Pro version, I can refresh that data 8 times per day. Now, if you want to refresh it 10 to 30 minutes, then that's clearly not going to work. If you buy the premium version, which is the next tier up, you can refresh 48 times per day. So that may solve the 10 to 30 minute interval. But there's also another mode that you can use, which is called direct query mode, where you actually don't load the data into powerbi.com, but you just create a live connection back to the SQL database. And in that particular mode, it's basically real time. But you just need to be aware that sometimes you won't get the same performance benefits and some of the same features that you would get when you're loading the data in import mode. Okay, does Power BI have an editor in the cloud, or do you have to use the desktop? So as of today, it's desktop only. So you can only build models in Power BI desktop. So that means connecting to tables, joining relationships, writing the formulas. That must be done in Power BI desktop. But building the report can be done in the cloud. So you can build and enhance the report in the cloud, but you can't load new data and write new measures. I'm not aware of any plans to change that, so it's designed to work that way. Can Power BI be used as a CRM system, both visuals and input? Well, this is a yes and no answer. So in short, Power BI does not have any persistent storage of data of its own. So it's a reporting tool. It relies on the data being captured, stored, and processed in some other location, and then Power BI will faithfully load that data and allow you to report on it. So that's the no answer. The yes answer is that there's another product called Power Apps, and Power Apps is a low-code development tool that allows citizen developers to build applications. There's no reason why you couldn't build your own simple CRM system, even as simply as having an Excel spreadsheet on the back end. And you can embed a Power App inside a Power BI report and allow users to make data entry into the app and then see those entries refresh back into the report. So it is possible, but it's not designed out of the box to work that way, and that would be some work, and you would need to have someone who understood how to do those things. I'm not really sure I understand the next question. Maybe it was a typo. It says how Node-RED is integrated in Power BI. I'm not really sure what that means. I guess it's probably a typo. Theo, if you see that message, maybe you can you could just clarify what that was all about. And I'll have a look at it if you just add another question there. All right, so so sounds like the sound was fixed at about 6:17, so that's good. Can I use Power BI to train models for ML? Gee, that's a good question as well. So ML is machine learning, and I don't know a lot about machine learning. What I can tell you is there's a lot of heavy integration between Power BI and the broader Microsoft ecosystem. So strong integration with Azure and Azure ML and Databricks and all of the other things that frankly I don't know a lot about. There's also integration with R and Python and some of those other open source products. And so I can't really give you a clear answer on that, but I wouldn't be surprised because there's often there's a lot of integration that's going on there. Can you run the Power BI app without a service account? I think the answer to that is no. It depends what you mean by Power BI app. So when you log into powerbi.com, that's technically called the app. And if you've got the app on your phone, the app is a direct connection to the cloud. So the data must be in the service before you can consume it. The only way you can consume it without publishing to the service is in Power BI Desktop, and that's basically a local version of that. You must have they say business or school account to create your own free Power BI account. But the reality is you just can't use Gmail or Hotmail or Yahoo or anything like that. You must have a proper domain account, and there's a fair bit of background and history as to why that is. So yes, you need an account, but it's free to get started as long as you've got something other than Gmail. Is there a way to set a periodic task in Power BI? So on the first every month, pull in data and generate reports and mail it. Absolutely, there is. I didn't show you, but there's a refresh schedule that you can set up, and you can just schedule it to do up to 8 times a day or once a week or once a month. And there's all sorts of things that you can do. You can subscribe to printed versions of the report. So get Power BI, when the data changes, to send an email PDF document out to a subscriber list, and they can have a look at it. But they all have to have a pro account. So it's not a way to circumvent the licensing. Everyone does need a license who participates in that sharing process. What if the CSVs are different column types and values? So this was from the file combine. The general pattern that I showed you assumes that the CSVs are of the same data type, of the same basic file structure. There are some exceptions, so you can definitely have more rows without it causing any issues. It is possible to have some changes in the columns between the files, but the truth is it would be a little bit harder to configure, and you'd need a bit of experience to manage that. So the file combine process is really designed to automatically combine files of the same type. I showed you CSVs, but the files could have been text files or they could have been Excel files, as long as they're the same basic structure. Does Power BI have any API or command line interface? Yes, it definitely does. In fact, the Power BI development team build the APIs first, and then they build the user interface on top. And there's a whole lot of API documentation. I think if you just go into Power BI, if you just search for Power BI API, you'll find the documentation. So this is it here, the Power BI REST API docs. And what's really cool about these REST API docs is that if you want to learn how to use it, like I want to get data set, you can actually come in and click this try it button, and without having any coding tools or anything like that, you can actually run the API and get a result and see how it works. So the work that they've done on that API piece is amazing. I just want to take a time check here. So we're almost at the top of the hour. I'm going to keep answering these questions until I get to the bottom. I've certainly got time to do that. So some people may have to drop off if they have another commitment. I understand that. Nadia is recording this, and so if you miss and you want to come back and see the rest of the questions, feel free to do that. Okay, another question. Could you please write down at the end of the recommended languages to use for the Power BI? All right, so the two languages, maybe I'll just do a quick little thing here. Maybe I should have done it in the Q&A, but the two languages you need to learn are DAX and M. And in fact, I would say the one language. So there's only one language that you really need to learn, and it's DAX. The M language is the one that exists inside Power Query. Power Query is much easier to use without learning the language. When you come to data modeling and writing measures, you really do need to know at least something about the DAX language. Otherwise, you just can't make a lot of progress as a data modeler. The way I like to describe it is, imagine you're an Excel user and you know how to open an Excel file and you can look at the data in the Excel file, but imagine that you can't write any formulas, right? So the only thing you can do in Excel, the only thing you know how to do is hit this auto sum button, right? So that's it. I don't know how to do anything else. All I can do is push that button. I don't know anything about formulas. If that was the case, you would have very limited capability inside Excel. There's just only a certain amount that you could do. That's the way I think about the DAX language. If you can't write DAX, then you're basically locked down to just doing those simple click things. Can a dashboard be embedded in a web page? Yeah, good question. I believe it can. There are these embedding items here. So if I go to my my report here, notice that there's some embedding options here. So yes, you can embed reports. I'm pretty sure you can do dashboards as well, but these things are often turned off by default, and you just need to get the administrator of your tenant to give you permission to do that. So yeah, you can embed them on portals and stuff. And so I think that answers that. Yes, you can. Can you explain about Power BI integration with Azure? How to set up a no, I can't. Short answer is no, I can't. I'm sorry. So so data pipelines and Azure bricks and all these things, it's just not my skill area. I don't know a lot about it other than they exist, and I'd have to defer you to the internet to try and find an answer there. So sorry about that one. Okay, this is a big one. I get Power BI. I'm just going to read it, and then I'm going to try and summarize. Okay, so there's some discussion about licensing, and there's some other open source products out there. There's Jupyter. I don't know anything about Jupyter. I don't know whether other people can see these questions as well. I guess they probably can. Okay, look, I just don't want to sort of read that word for word and just put everyone else on pause. Let me just, I don't know if this is the theme of the question or not, but let me just share my thoughts on this, on licensing, because licensing does come up. At the end of the day, Microsoft is a software development company for profit, and they have built this product, and I believe they should be able to sell the product at a fair price. It's free to use for personal use, or you can use it at business. The only time they ask you to pay is when you want to share your content with somebody else. And therefore, if you're sharing it, presumably you're getting value. And to pay Microsoft $10 a month to get this enterprise strength reporting tool, I reckon that's a pretty fair price. I do have some opinions about pricing around 500, 600 users. I think it's quite expensive, but once you get into sort of 5,000, 10,000 users, then premium pricing kicks in, and the price per user is actually very affordable indeed. So, so Microsoft is not an open source company. It's a for-profit software company. And frankly, I think they're probably the only company that could have pulled this product off. There's plenty of other BI products out there. Tableau was orders of magnitude more expensive than Power BI was before Power BI came along. But Tableau's rethinking its strategy as a result of that. So I'm sorry I didn't probably really answer that question. Okay, I think maybe I've got to the end, and I see that Nadia's closed off their questions. So so that's pretty good timing. It's sort of 4 or 5 minutes after the hour. So Nadia has put a feedback survey down the bottom in the live Q&A chat window there. So I would appreciate it if you would give me your feedback. Tell me whether this was of interest to you and whether it was what you expected. And thank you very much for joining. If you would like to learn more from me, please, here's a link to my website. This is my short website code, xbi.com. I have a stack of free learning resources on my website, and also my other commercial products that I have as well. So thanks for joining, and good luck with your Power BI journey.
Thank you so much for that, Matt. That was really great. You can see the discussions and the questions that were coming through. So sorry to those who I had to close the Q&A for. I've just been mindful of time. Thank you for that, Matt. I thought I'd quickly just go through just to give you a bit of an update on the Reactor events that are up and coming, and to join our community as well. If you want to see more events like this, please do let us know by filling out that survey and using the event code 7997. You'll be able to find out the events that we have up and coming on our meetup page, so meetup.com/Microsoft Reactor Sydney. All our global reactors all have their meetup pages as well, so some of us have very different content. You'll be able to find out information on that on our Twitter account, and you'll find the recordings of all these sessions on our YouTube channel as well. If you do have any questions, want to reach out to us directly, maybe even want to get involved and do one of our online Reactor virtual events, you can contact us at reactorset@microsoft.com. So next week we've got a couple of sessions coming up, and I know Matt touched briefly on Power Apps. So we're actually running a session where you can learn and build a Power App in an hour. So I know this might not be a convenient time for anyone in the UK and Europe region. However, it will be recorded and uploaded on our YouTube channel. We also have another session called The Story Behind Microsoft 365 May. So we had a big M365 May event a couple months ago, and it was all this content around, M365. And so we're going to be joined by the organisers who are behind the scenes of this event, who are going to take you through the journey of putting together a virtual event. I mean, if you're interested in getting your user group into the online world, like where we are now, there'd be a really, really great group to ask questions, and they're going to share their challenges and how they're going to do things differently. So if you've got any big virtual events coming up, or you're even starting off small, this would be a great session to attend. We also have another one, and as well, we touched on Jupyter Notebooks, but this one is in association with PowerShell. So this is going to be an introductory session. They're going to introduce you to PowerShell Jupyter Notebook. They're going to tell you how you can navigate through it, and then take us through some advanced scenarios as well. So you can find out all the information on these events on our meetup page. As mentioned, if you do have any feedback, I've popped the link in the Q&A chat. And so thank you to all of you who have joined tonight. Good morning, good evening, and we will see you next time. So thank you and bye.